In the heart of a bustling city, beneath the glittering skyline and luxury cars speeding by, there stood a small, almost forgotten cafe. Inside, amid the aroma of burnt coffee and tired chatter, worked a young waitress named Elena. She was barely 22, her apron worn out, her shoes patched from the soles, yet her smile could melt the heaviest of hearts. Every morning before sunrise, Elena would tie her hair into a loose bun, put on her faded uniform, and whisper a quiet promise to herself, one more day. Just one more day, and things will get better. But life had its way of testing those who already had so little left to lose. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the quiet power of good people, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to Kindness Journal, where true stories remind us that miracles still happen every day. Elena's life hadn't been easy. She had lost her mother when she was just 9, and her father, once a proud mechanic, had drowned himself in sorrow and alcohol. After years of struggling to care for him and herself, she was left completely alone when he passed away. She had no savings, no relatives willing to help, and only one thing of value, a small silver pendant in the shape of a heart. It wasn't fancy or expensive, but it was the last gift her mother had given her. Engraved on the back were the words, "You are loved, always." It was the one thing she never took off, not even when she slept. It was more than jewelry, it was her hope. Days at the cafe were long and unforgiving. The manager, Mr. Burns, was a man who cared more about tips than people. He'd scold Elena for the smallest mistakes, if a table wasn't cleaned fast enough, if a customer complained about cold coffee, or even if she smiled too long at a guest. She endured it all quietly because she needed every penny. Her tiny rented room barely had space for a bed and a cracked mirror, and most nights she went to sleep with an empty stomach, telling herself things would someday change. Then, one cold rainy evening, something happened that shattered the fragile rhythm of her life. The cafe was busier than usual, a group of businessmen had taken over the corner tables. Elena rushed between orders, balancing trays and bills. But in her haste, she accidentally spilled a cup of coffee, right on the expensive suit of one of the customers. He was furious, shouting insults loud enough for the entire cafe to hear. The manager stormed out from behind the counter, red-faced and trembling with rage. Without even listening to her apology, he shouted, "You're done here, Elena. Pack your things and get out. You've embarrassed us enough." The cafe went silent. Elena stood there, her hands shaking, her heart sinking. Tears welled in her eyes as she removed her apron. No one defended her. She quietly walked out into the rain, her hair soaked, her shoes splashing in puddles, and her pendant cold against her skin. She spent that night sitting on a park bench, watching the city lights blur through her tears. She had nowhere to go, no money for rent, no food, and no family. The pendant rested in her palm, and she whispered, "Mom, I don't know what to do anymore." The next morning, she gathered her courage and went back to the cafe, hoping to at least collect her last paycheck. But as she entered, she noticed a crowd near the corner booth. The cafe staff was buzzing around nervously, because seated there was a man whose presence commanded attention. Dressed in a simple yet elegant suit, with silver hair and a calm but powerful aura, he was none other than Richard Donovan, one of the city's most well-known billionaires. He had built an empire from scratch, but his eyes carried a sadness money could never heal. Elena didn't know who he was, she simply walked up to the counter, avoiding everyone's gaze. As she turned to leave, her pendant slipped from her neck, the thin chain snapped, and the little silver heart rolled across the floor, stopping right beside the billionaire's shoes. Richard bent down, picked it up, and froze. For a long moment, he just stared at the pendant, his face turning pale. Then he asked softly, "Where did you get this?" Elena, startled and embarrassed, replied quietly, "It was my mother's. She gave it to me when I was a child. It's all I have left of her." The cafe had gone silent again, every eye watching. Richard's hands trembled as he turned the pendant over and read the engraving. His voice broke as he whispered, "You are loved, always." The words hit him like lightning. Decades earlier, he had given that exact pendant to a woman he once loved deeply but had lost in tragic circumstances. Her name was Laura. They had been inseparable in their youth, but when he left to build his business, fate had pulled them apart. He searched for her years later but never found her again. And now, standing before him was a young woman with Laura's same eyes, holding the very pendant he thought was lost forever. With tears glistening in his eyes, Richard asked, "What was your mother's name?" When Elena said, "Laura," his knees nearly gave way. It was as if time stopped. He realized the woman he had loved so long ago had passed away, leaving behind this daughter, his daughter. The cafe gasped as the billionaire stepped forward, his voice trembling, "Elena, you're my child." Elena couldn't believe it. Her entire body shook. She wanted to deny it, but deep down, something in her heart whispered that it was true. Her mother had told her once about a man she loved who had promised to come back but never did. That man had been Richard Donovan. She broke down crying as he embraced her, the pendant still shining between them like a bridge across time and pain. The cafe staff stood frozen, including the same manager who had fired her just hours before. Richard looked at him sharply, his tone cold and controlled. "You fired this young woman for a mistake anyone could make. You judged her by her uniform, not her heart. I'll be buying this cafe today, and she'll never have to serve people like you again." The manager's face drained of color. That night, Elena sat in a quiet restaurant beside her newfound father. For the first time in years, she ate a warm meal without fear of running out of money. Richard told her everything, how he had spent years chasing wealth, thinking it would fill the emptiness inside, only to realize that the only treasure he'd ever needed was the family he lost. Tears flowed freely as he held her hand and said, "I can't change the past, but I'll spend the rest of my life making up for it." From that day forward, Elena's world transformed. She moved into a beautiful home, began studying again, and started helping young girls who struggled with poverty and loss just as she once had. But she never forgot where she came from. She still wore the pendant every day, not because of its value, but because it reminded her that love can find you even when the world turns its back. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, share it with someone who believes in miracles, and subscribe to Kindness Journal, because kindness, faith, and second chances can change lives in ways we can never imagine. Before you go, tell us in the comments, what would you do if a small act of kindness or a forgotten memory suddenly changed your life forever? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Elena's story reminds us that even in our darkest hours, fate can still find us. Sometimes, the people we lose are not truly gone, they live on in the pieces of our hearts we carry, waiting for the day they return as miracles we never saw coming.